We have a great panel on food loss and waste and the solutions that are being implemented from college campuses to commercial kitchens. Stacey will again be the awesome moderator. Joining her, we have my board member, Regina Harmon, the executive director of the Food Recovery Network. Give it up for her. Marc Zornes, one of my other board members, it's nepotism here, the founder of Winnow. Give it up for him. Angel Veza, the Senior Manager of Innovation Initiatives at ReFed. Do you want to join the board? And Ryan Began, the co-founder and CEO of Divert, and I'm going to invite him to the board tonight. Over to you, Stacey.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for talking about food waste. Angel, I thought I would start with you because you deal with a lot of data and information coming in, and I think that can be like a good way to set the stage for a conversation. So I'm wondering, as you're watching all this information and data coming in all the time, what is striking to you right now? What have we seen change? What is getting better, worse?
Sure,
What are you seeing?
I mean, what still strikes me is, as we all know, over a third of all food produced goes uneaten, and that costs us over $400 billion. So just that economic challenge there. But of course, we're all here also because we care about climate. And we were able to actually do some recent calculations around methane emissions, specifically as it relates to food waste across the food system. And we found that food waste is responsible for about 4 million metric tons of methane emissions. That's the equivalent of 14% of the methane emissions here in this country, which is a lot. And when we look at the solutions, we're finding that, yes, prevention is still important, and it's still going to give you the biggest bang for your buck. But if we want to rapidly reduce methane emissions, we need to divert food waste from landfills quickly. So we're talking about, centralized composting. We're talking about AED solutions because we need to divert it from landfill. And of course, again, prevention is still important, but it's going to take too long for those prevention solutions to create the impact that we're looking for now. So that's kind of the latest that we've been seeing with the data.
Marc, you deal in a lot of, I'm sorry.
I'm Ryan.
I'm sorry. You deal with a lot of like very solution-oriented approaches that different entities can take. I'm wondering what some of the solutions that you're seeing that are maybe the most exciting to you would be?
So we process about 800 million pounds per year of food waste. So that's food that can't be sold or donated from our grocery store partners that were otherwise going to landfill. To date, we have raised about $1.3 billion to build the solutions that Angel was referencing. But what's really cool about what we do, it's not that we are building solutions that are building out the infrastructure necessary. What's really cool is when you keep food waste out of landfill, you start to look at it differently. So when we implement a diversion program, and I think Marc will talk about what he's also doing, that data, that awareness that comes with a diversion program is absolutely critical. I was sharing with Angel, I have 4 kids. We separate our food waste at home, and it's incredibly educational for them to understand if it goes into the trash, it sort of disappears. It goes into this hole in the ground. It produces methane emissions, leachate, all of these terrible things. But when you separate it, you start to look at it differently. And they see the accumulation, like, wow, that's from like 3 days, 4 days. And then we're going to compost it together at our house. And so I think it's really a mosaic of solutions that is required to not only keep food waste out of landfill, but also drive that awareness in upstream source reduction. And making these things happen at the same time is incredibly difficult.
And you're using food waste to create fuel.
Correct.
Is that right?
So food waste today, because of all of our packaging, from Apple stickers to plastic clamshells, plastic has become inherent to our food. And the necessity is that we remove this before we recycle it. What we don't want to do is drive microplastics to land. We don't want to take one problem and move it to another area. So anaerobic digestion for us, it's a wet process. Food waste is 85% water. So really what we're talking about is keeping water out of landfills as well. And so it's a wet solution where we biologically break down food, keep the nutrients intact. We can rescue the water, and the carbon that's inside of our food, we are biologically converting that into renewable fuel. So we're setting all fossil fuels with what we can create. And it really starts to become a really interesting play where we can produce energy in areas that don't necessarily have access to energy. So Lexington, North Carolina, which is our next facility, we're generating renewable natural gas that's going to provide to that community and local food manufacturing and other industrial solutions.
Regina, your organization is a student-led organization, and you deal with food waste too, but it's more of a redirecting effort. Would you mind kind of describing what you do and the changes that you've seen?
I would love to, thank you. And as I'm talking, I would love to bring in the Lenape tribe into the conversation and just to give a quick honor and recognition that we are on their lands, so with respect and with love. So I'm Regina, I'm the Executive Director of Food Recovery Network. It's an organization of about 200 college chapters across the United States. We were started by college students at the University of Maryland in 2011. It was the process of young people being on their college campus in academia, learning about some of the issues that we've discussed throughout the day, and all of you, incredible food tank supporters, that we hear about. But they weren't getting a lot of solutions. And so they were hearing about climate crisis. When I was growing up, it was, maybe climate change, but it was definitely climate crisis, going into climate emergency, global poverty, wars, what to do. And at the same time, a couple of the founders, they had work studies, and so they were, working on their dining halls. And at the end of their shift, they were directed to throw away all this really great food that at 4:58 was perfectly fine to purchase, but for some reason at 5:01 they had to throw it away. They were also volunteering out in their community, so yay to volunteers. And they saw the direct need, so they were participating in peanut butter and jelly sandwich making drives. They were participating, at soup kitchens, and they're like, yeah, this is really helpful. But wait a second, we have all of this really great food here. Why can't we just take this food over here and bring it to the people that we know are experiencing food insecurity? And so they devised a plan. They talked to their dining manager, who at first was like, I'm not talking to you. Didn't have time for them. And this is the beauty of people. They wouldn't take no for an answer. So they kept going to her day after day after day and said, hey, can we have a meeting? She finally heard them out. They told her name's Colleen. She's still in our corner to this day. They told Colleen their idea, and she said, oh my gosh, that's actually a really good idea. Okay. So the important swerve to all of this with their idea was that she gave them all the information that they needed to handle the food safely. So the food could be removed, prepared food, and they brought it to a church down the street from the University of Maryland. And then the beautiful thing is, again, the power of people, and particularly the power of young people and the young at heart. They just started calling their friends all across the United States to say, hey, we're doing this at UMD, you should do it too. So they called their friends at Brown, Berkeley, Pomona. And that is how Food Recovery Network started. So one carload of food at a time. We are a local solution. We're a national organization with a local solution. So we have some chapters here in New York City. You might not have access to cars. We're all the way out in California, in the middle of the country. So every school is different. The rhythm of every school is slightly different. But at the center of all of it is this desire to feed people who are unnecessarily experiencing food insecurity.
Mm-hmm. And Marc, you look at different ways that food gets wasted because it's not the same process all over the world. There are certain things like, I know you've looked at like cold chain is an issue in some areas, in other areas it's not. What are some of the biggest challenges, I guess, that you see as you're sort of looking at different places and different ways to solve food waste issues in different parts of the world?
Yeah, so Winnow's a technology company. We help provide data for chefs to be able to understand and prevent food waste. The issue of food waste in kitchens, commercial kitchens, is that about 10 to 20% of the food that gets purchased ends up getting thrown away, which honestly, when I first got into it and started digging into it, the question I was like, why? Because these are businesses that are low margin, need to be able to make a profit. Why is it that this happens? And particularly in sort of large scale operations, there's just a lot of people, everyone's very, very busy. They don't track food waste because actually tracking it and understanding it is difficult. And so what we do is we use computer vision to analyze what's being thrown away in real time, and we give data to chefs to help them understand what they can do to prevent it. We work in over 80 countries around the world. Today, our clients are saving over $70 million a year in food being thrown away. What we see around the world, honestly, is I think, first of all, it starts from food waste around there is a desire to be hospitable. There is a desire to sort of put the best out for your guests and for people to come into your restaurant. And sometimes that leads to unintended consequences where too much food is produced. By giving people data to then make changes around how to drive that down, they're able to address that. We did some work with Hilton where we looked at something called the green breakfast, right? Sort of every hotel around the world has a breakfast. And what we demonstrated in this project was that you could actually reduce food waste by making some simple changes around how food was produced, driving more data understanding in the kitchen, and actually sort of changing how you laid out certain foods in a breakfast buffet, for example. And we cut food waste by about 64% in those operations. And sort of now that's serving as a template of how they might think about scaling that up. And so, while I think, we work in the UAE, we work in Asia, there's lots of different cultural factors that drive it, but it's that common sense of needing and wanting to be hospitable, putting the best foot forward to your guests, to your diners, while also having a very busy, chaotic kitchen that sort of comes together to be able to cause that problem.
Do most of your clients engage you because they're interested in saving money, or is it because they are interested in the issue of running a more environmentally friendly business?
We get our foot in the door with the heart of food waste as a problem and something that environmentally you want to get after. We scale with organizations because it makes economic sense, right? Because there's actually a really strong return on investment in doing that. It's been proven many times, on average, it's anywhere between a 2 to 10x return on investment for investing in food waste prevention technology.
So it's not the money that necessarily gets people in the door. I ask because I'm wondering if we're going to see real change. It does seem like companies either need to have really the will to change, or they need to feel like it's to their advantage in some way. So I'm wondering what your all experiences have been, and feel free to jump in, but where the interest is coming from, if it's that they want to save money and they see an opportunity there, or if they care, or if it's optics, or why people are maybe going to make changes, starting to make changes.
I'll speak for us. I think from our customers, which are nearly every major retailer in the country we service on a nationwide basis, it starts with the boardroom, which really is the shareholder. It's their employees. It's the engagement that we see. And the value proposition starts to change. So we're paid about, on average, 6 cents per pound that we manage. The value of that food is about $1.75. So retailers are already incentivized to sell that food. The hard part is, we're talking about chaos. There could be up to 200 employees that work at a single grocery store. The amount of volume that they're turning over, having food on the shelves, slips, trips, and falls, things happening in the parking lot. These are all issues that they're trying to contend with. At the same time, deliver fresh food so that you're visiting their store because it's an ultra competitive, low margin business. So for someone to think, well, I'm also going to try to do everything I can to squeeze that pack of strawberries and bring it to the back room and cut it, where that employee may be making minimum wage, is not thinking in the best interest of the business, or maybe in the best interest of sustainability. So it's awareness and driving these things. It starts with education. It starts with people caring and putting their dollars where they see that value. And we're seeing that change. We are absolutely enterprise-led across the country. We are more successful in the southeast of the United States than we are in California. We get paid more in the southeast than we do in California. So why? Because we are one of the only solutions that exist in the market. There's a pull into that market for those solutions to exist. So there is a lot of change happening very quickly across the US from our perspective.
Maybe I'll just add to that, and I'll take a different approach. So just to take a step back, in my role, I manage our Catalytic Grant Fund, and we recently did an open call focused on solutions for restaurants, specifically independent restaurants, so not necessarily chains. And much like what Marc and Ryan are saying is, I was a chef, and it is insane in the back of house. And chefs get into the business because they love food. They really care about it, so they don't want to waste it. So when we were starting to work with these restaurants to pilot the solutions that our grantees have to offer, it was coming in first about like, oh, so passionately not wanting to waste food. But what we learned is, because it's so chaotic, these solutions need to be simple, convenient. They need to not disrupt operations at all. And those are the types of solutions we funded, and that's what actually is getting into these restaurants and driving adoption of solutions. So I would say those are the three things we really looked for.
When you say that chefs really care about food, a lot of restaurants are not necessarily chef vision driven. Certainly, like in New York and Brooklyn, there are a lot of chefs who really care about food, but a lot of restaurants across the country are chain restaurants or very focused on the bottom line and things like that. Are you still seeing the same interest there, or is that a completely different?
I would say it's a bit of a different beast.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely. I would say it's actually more similar to what Marc sees, where it is coming in and looking at how can we drive operational efficiency. So it's still about reducing waste, but now we're talking about it from an efficiency and cost-saving standpoint with chains.
Can I just add, though, I think that you can shift that dynamic in those operations. Maybe not necessarily a fast food restaurant where you're really executing. But the favorite story I had today was Marriott, another customer of ours. There's a video on LinkedIn of David Marriott, who's the chairman, doing a recipe with one of the chefs we work with about a banana peel burger that's actually being served in the UK. And it's not to say that banana peel burgers need to be the norm, but I think that when you start to think about the food as the ingredient as something you can really be creative with and make the most of the products coming into it, and when you inspire people about that, that's when you win the hearts of the chefs who may work in these large organizations, but really then excite them to be able to drive that change.
I would say from our perspective, to your question, we see it on both sides at Food Recovery Network. On the student side, in terms of money, and money being the driver, at this point, if 44 million people are food insecure, that is a policy decision that we believe is the wrong decision. It's inhumane. And so our students will take 45 minutes to package up food and bring it to a church, a school, after school program. It doesn't really matter. So that is just the humanness of sharing food. We should not be throwing it away, period. And we can do those small acts of kindness. On the other side, at Food Recovery Network, we have a program called Food Recovery Verified, where we do work with businesses and large-scale events to help them think through their own food recovery programs. And we're seeing all kinds of things. A lot of times, people think, oh, we have food, and so here you can take our food. And we're like, okay, are you going to pay for the transportation? And we pay, people's time to do this. And they're like, oh, whoa. And then we think, okay, you can do this now and pay a nonprofit a very small fee. Or, as New York goes, as California goes, when you have to start paying thousands of dollars to do this, it's not so inexpensive of a proposition. It just matters, I think, where, every budget is slightly different, but the idea that it's not going to cost money, we have to get rid of that. But, with tax incentives, with understanding how much food you're ordering in the first place, there is a huge opportunity to recapture a lot of money that's on the table that I think a lot of companies, it's that murky middle that they just aren't looking at right now. But we hope to get people's attention to that money on the table.
You are all working with organizations of different kinds and sizes and scales, and I'm wondering if you see the elimination of food waste as something that's really driven by smaller independent businesses and organizations, or if there's also a role for like big kind of multinational companies. I'm wondering what your experience has been.
I think it's driven by the bottom line. I think it's driven by awareness. When you are a CPG and you're Driscoll Strawberry, you're delivering strawberries and there's swell baked into your costs with those retailers. Like, that food supply chain is incredibly complex. And then you see on the back end Driscoll Strawberries being thrown into the trash. So I think that incentive structure is just sort of common sense. I think it's part of the education, the awareness that's starting to come out more because of groups like Food Tank, that people want to do better. Giving them the simple solutions, like Angel was saying, is really important. Giving them the data that Marc's talking about is also important, so what gets measured gets managed, and that's really important within these systems as well.
I mean, we're working with large organizations, solely because we think that's the first port of call to drive scale. When large organizations make commitments to reduce food waste, then they need to talk about it in their annual reports, and then they need to deliver on that, right? To be able to deliver on that, they need tools to be able to really make that work across their organizations. So to answer your question, I think it comes from both sides. What I can speak to is I can speak to large organizations. Groups like IKEA have cut their food waste in half. Guggenheimer ISS's U.S. Food Services, one of the largest food service operators in the U.S., just announced this week that they've cut their food waste in half. So what we're starting to see some of these organizations that made those commitments now delivering on that. Now what we need is the other organizations that have made those commitments to pony up the money, get serious about it, and actually make it happen.
I mean, the last thing I'll add to that, we also work with big companies also. So ReFed, in partnership with World Wildlife Fund, has been leading the U.S. Food Waste Pact, which has leading companies across different industries. Walmart is a member, so is Chick-fil-A. But it's a great way to bring these big players to drive impact in a pre-competitive way, because big companies have big impact.
Mm-hmm.
And we work with everyone. Big, small. We have a chapter that every Saturday they literally go to the bagel shop and get like a bag full of bagels to donate to their food partner. And then we work with all the big guys too. But Gen Z, millennials, the largest population of people, in the United States right now, they're looking, and these are the expectations that they have, that let's cut, the gig is up. We have to stop throwing food away.
You're here.
I feel like there are a lot of aspects of food that are connected to climate, and food waste is not usually one of the most talked about. I'm wondering, maybe, and all of you have dedicated a lot of time and enterprise to this cause. I'm wondering why this should be at the top of mind when we're talking about food and climate. Why should food waste be in that conversation?
Oh, for us, I mean, as I mentioned earlier, the students that started FRN, the students that continue to drive FRN, born into this world that it doesn't make any sense that we're treating our earth so poorly. And so it just is a way that we have to begin to manage our beautiful resources better, and we have the skill sets to do that. We think we have the will to do that, and it is just about providing that gentle ways to others around us. We're not so much wagging our fingers at anyone. We've had people come and say, oh my gosh, we have no idea how to tackle our food waste. And we say, come on in, we can help you with this. But if it is going to take all of our water, all of our extra fertilizer, all of these, extra resources, we must be better stewards of this. Because here's the thing. The way that the environment is right now, Mother Earth is telling us something. And when we can stop wasting food, the third largest emitter of CO2 gases, we're not an elastic band. We're not gonna snap back to the way things were when I was growing up. What we have right now is what we're gonna have for the next several generations, before all of us are gone. So what we have right now is what we've created. And so what we're asking people is, please, let's not make it any worse. We can change this now and make this, we can still adapt, to what we have right now. Plus, hey, we get to share some bread with others around us. All right, I'm in.
I'm wondering if there's something happening now that maybe makes you especially,
I'm so sorry.
Yes.
And especially because my board members are up here. Ballsy, right? Stacey, thank you so much. Give a round of